is Fredric Berling. I am here today to talk about some real-world business demands that you can face as a developer or a team member when you're consuming data with this Sencha framework. It's a collection of things that I've collected during my years as a consultant working with Sencha. I've been doing professional services for about version 1. Based in Sweden, I run my own company called Entence. You have to email me if you have questions afterwards, something like that. And very excited to be at Sencha again. This is the highlight of the year. I have some friends with me here from Sweden. So let's get started. The agenda for today is first we're going to talk about reading and saving just simple data, the way that Sencha presents it for us, or it's meant to be consumed in the demos. And then we're going to have some real-world data and demands, business demands that can come from the product owner or the API developers, and see how we can apply those on the actual in Sencha on the data layer, so we can consume them in a good way. We're going to talk a little bit about associations. It's been kind of a mystery for me, or it's changed during the iterations of the framework, but now I think I got a hold of it, so I can share my experiences with that, and they're awesome. So. And then multimodal scenarios. This is where data sessions come in. Also a very good thing to learn. It gives you a lot of control over your users' changes. So we're going to deep dive into that. Multimodal scenarios. Small point about errors at the end. I know there has been a session about that, but this is just a quick tips of how to handle errors coming from the backend. So let's start with reading simple data. Or at first, there's a short recap. This is going to be, the level of this session is going to be like beginner, intermediate, but also the advanced are probably going to get something out of it also. Short recap of the MVVM. Model view, view model, view controller is the classes that we are talking about here in this session. When I say model, I mean ext data model, the model without UI and anything. This is just behind the scenes. The view is anything deriving from the ext component, mostly it's a panel or a container in our case. The view model and the view controller. Those three together is called the view package. If anyone using the Sencha plugin, it's great view package, and then you get those three classes. But then time to couple together. In our sample application that we're going to use very soon, I'm using these three classes. CRM is the name of the application. .view.viewport, that is the view, what you see on the screen. And then we have a connected viewport model and a viewport controller for functionality and functions. And this is the very advanced CRM system that I've built for this session. It contains one customer. So it actually has a limit of one customer because you cannot create anything in it. And it's also just 5, right now it's just 4 fields. This could be the world's smallest CRM system, but we're going to make it a bit bigger during the session. So let's see look at data that we are ready to consume out of the box. This is pretty much how you want the data to look like if you live in a dream world. Worth noting is ID field is lowercase, that's Sencha standard, and the date is formatted in an understandable format. I would say the superior format because it's the way we use in Sweden. It's also sortable right out of the box. That could be the standard. That would be great. We have connected a data model for it that is the company profile. Now we're talking about the data model, not the view model. No fields configure really needed because they're mostly strings, except date. We include the field definition for the updated date field because that's a date. We need to address that. We also have a super simple proxy. A lot of Sencha's own default values will apply when we configure it like this, but it looks good. It's going to be an Ajax proxy with a JSON reader, also a configured writer, but you're not seeing that. So this is very nice code. And then we're going to load the data into this form that we created, the view. We do that using the Sencha view model function called link to. think that's, I don't know when that was introduced, but it's cool. It takes a name that you choose. In our case, we're going to choose company profile. It takes a config object where you tell what model it's going to use and the ID. What's going to happen is that it's going to go out to that model, load its proxy, and populate the view model. We're going to set a company profile on the view model. So after doing this command, the proxy there will be an AJAX request from the backend using the proxy. And when it's done, we're going to have a company profile word to use when we bind stuff to this view model. So company profile will be our reference in all bindings. Company profile is the instantiated data model. And then, also this is standard stuff. We're binding every field to its the data model using the company profile word that we choose, dot company name, which is the field in the JSON. So we do that for all the fields. That's just an example of the text field first. Then we bind all those three classes, the view model, and view controller, are bind together using the view model config and the controller config on the view. So we tell the view, this is my view model class, and this is my view controller class. Also adding some padding there for making it super beautiful. So let's see it in action. Hopefully there are going to be a lot of demos. So let's hope the demo goes on with me. See, it's going to prove every step that I'm talking about, so you don't think I'm blurting or just making things up here. So this is the actual JSON return from the mock file. And this is the result. Okay, saving simple data. We're starting to save data. Now we just add a button on the actual viewport on the view in the buttons config. Save. It's got a handler on save. That function is going to be mapped over to the onSave function in the view controller by default. In that function, we're taking hold of the view model, getting the company profile data model by the word of it, .save. So it's going to save the data model using its own proxy. I have a small node server running these examples. See anything on the screen there, yeah. So there we go. And if I save something here, now I have a beautiful save button here. When it saves, I know I changed the address and it saves here. And what's being sent is only the ID of the record and the changed field. Only the changed stuff was sent. This is standard behavior. Okay, so conclusion. When we save something out of the box, this simple configuration, it's going to send us the ID always and the field that we're changing. It's going to know about that in the model, the save, send that. And the required response for that is always, when you're dealing with this model, the full record. Always return the full record back on the response of the post. Because then everything will be realized in the view again. In this case, we are updating the updated data. You can see that if I'm going to be bold and go back again. No. Here. Notice the date. When I change something here and press save, it's going to update the date. And that's the date returned in the response. So I don't need to click save and load afterwards. It's just go in one call. That's going to save you a lot of calls. Okay. Okay, let's go moving on. So, note for the only dirty field data was sent, ID was almost sent. The same URL was used for reading and posting. And response data was automatically realized when we returned. So, let's put some real world demands on the data. Data doesn't always look like it did in our example. This is more how it might look when you come out and do to a company to consume their data. The ID is probably not ID, it's probably something with ID with a big I, or document ID, or in this case like underscore ID. That's notable in this. And also the address is all of a sudden a config object. And this is very, very common that data, when they serialize their domain model or their data model, it ends up as config objects. But the data model in Sencha is always flat. It's always just an array of fields. That makes this a bit hard to handle, but this is what we're going to handle. It's always also a very strange updated date. It's actually I think UTC standard or something, but there's a lot of milliseconds and numbers in it. So that's an observation. So our new customer demands is that the ID must be underscore ID, because they're using MongoDB and you can't change that. Live with it. The updated date should ignore time zones. The date that comes from the database is going to be the exact same date and time shown for the user. It's not going to add some time zones on it. And the exact same JSON structure that we read must be saved back. So now we have some problems. So everything you read should be modified, and then everything should be saved back in the exact same structure. This is becoming more and more common when it comes to NoSQL databases. They just want the complete JSON return. And the same must also be on a separate URL. If we start with the ID property, that's simple. We have a config on the data model. It says ID property is underscore ID. It defaults to ID without an underscore. Easily said. Consider doing this in an abstract class if you're always using this, so you don't need to specify it always. Because if you forget it, it might work, it might not work. Now the fun part. Read data from a nested object. Remember the address was an object which had the street, city, and country. Luckily, we have the mapping config on the fields array. So now we need to add the fields array. We name the fields and also the new config mapping. Address.street is flattened out to the model, to the data model, to the word street. We do that for all the fields that are in that objects. And then we should send all fields on save. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Actually, it's but now we need to include the writer, because now it's not enough with the default values anymore. We need to specify the writer, and when we do that, we must specify the type of the writer. It's a JSON writer we're using in the proxy, and we also add the config write all fields. This will make the writer, the proxy, always include all fields. And the keep object nesting on save, that was a part that was really tricky for me, because this could also look like a one-to-one association if you dealt with associations, but in this case it's not really necessary to have a separate model for address with fields and then do an association, just to make it write the data back in this way. Luckily we have two fantastic configs on writer. They might be a bit confusing when you read them in the documentation, but those two together, configured like this, will maintain your JSON structure when you save. The name of the expand data option makes the mapped field data sent back as in a nested format, but then you also must specify what field name it should use. And the field name to use is in that mapping field name that we used before to flatten that. So these two combined will make the JSON structure be kept in place. What's my time? Oh, we were reading. This is what we're reading. The address, street, city, country. Let's change something here. Let's change everything. IKEA. Move to a bigger place. Sweden will remain. There we go. Now it was sent to, also observe it was sent to a node with another URL. I'm going to show you why. little bit. The stuff being sent is always seen here in the headers. Here you see ID address was sent here with the new values. Updated it. Yes, there we go. And now about the date part. This is something that puzzled me, so I just want to tell you this about the dates. I'm going to show it to you also. Let's see the date here from the back end. When we read this, let's not reload it. The date is 1928. There, it seems like I have it configured right. And if I change it to not use a date format, this is the trick. See what happens. If you don't specify a date format, it will be a date, but it will be off with the number of hours for the time zone. So now I'm -8. So return from the server is 1928 is 7, but shown to the user is the added time zones. This can be quite confusing. You don't really understand why. But the trick is it's because it's UTC. It's probably because it thinks it's UTC and it want to convert it to local time. But to prohibit this, you just specify the exact date format for the the date. If you do that, it's going to ignore converting the time zones. If you have that format, you may want to take a picture of that string, or you can just look at this video afterwards. Dates. I hate dates. They're the worst.
Yes.
Yes.
In times and time zones.
Times and time zone. And anyone been having problems with Brazilian time zone? They have daylight saving times at midnight, which means that in Chrome, in Internet Explorer, it converts to 11 the day before, and in Chrome it's on the same day. So the date changed because of daylight saving. That's interesting. Yeah, reading and updating of separate URLs was the demand from the customer. We had configured our with the URL. Now we need to change the URL config to API. API is replacing the URL string, so you should never have them together. When you're using the API config, just get rid of the URL. Now we're in the API config. We can specify one path per method, per operation: read, update, destroy, and then create. But we only use read and update in this case. Associations. Yeah, I love associations. You gain so much. You don't have to create stores. They're automatically created for you. You can bind them in a nice way, and they're super effective when you want to walk through data in your domain model, and also reflects what you probably have in your server. You have the relationship databases. You might as well take advantage of that in your front end too. Using that more and more. In our customer now wants a grid under the form here, which includes licenses. He also says that he want to return those in an array on our to us. In line here, licenses, and then a couple of some objects describing those with IDs. Yeah, so we get to work and start doing that. We look at our drawing board here, and we have the company. It contains many licenses. In former XD versions, you had configs called has many, has one, stuff like that. You don't need them anymore. Now we're specifying a reference field on the models instead, and we're doing it backwards. When it comes to a has many, this is a has many association. That one company has many licenses, but we specify it on the license model. So we tell the license model that it has a parent and the model of that. So it starts by creating a field in the license model. We name it company ID, and that will probably be the foreign key you're using in your database, because this will that will probably be the name, the company ID there on each of those. Then we add a reference config where we tell this that the parent model is CRM model.company profile, our company model. Then this looks super strange for me, inverse role licenses, but it tells this association that from the company profile and down to licenses, we're calling this association licenses. So inverse means the other way around here. So this is going to give us some cool features, some cool functions. There are a number of other ways to configure those, but take a look in the documentation. This is the thing that I found most convenient. So are sessions useful? Yeah, they're automatically created stores. So the moment I read the company profile, there will be a pre-created store on that company profile. So if you look at the code, that will return a store. The function licenses will return a complete store, ready to use. And also every license instance will have a function that says get company, that can locate the company that it belongs to. So you don't have to look it up in any other way. It also provides us with nice bindings. Now we don't have a store in the view model, we don't have a store in the stores folder in our application. We just bind it under the company profile. So, what possible business scenarios can this be relevant in? I can see two types of associations that I've come across. Some want them to be inline, that you return all the array data, the associate data together in one big JSON structure. That's usually when you have a NoSQL database or something like that. Or you want the company profile to be read from one endpoint and the associate data from another endpoint. Or any combination of them between. You're reading an inline and you're writing them for separate proxies. Everything can be configured in the data layer. So in our case, the customer wants it as an inline, first as an inline association. So we're getting the full JSON, painting this picture. When we save, we also want everything to be posted. This is not by design. Sencha doesn't really care about associated data on save by default. But luckily there is a all data options property on the writer. And if you set associated to true, it will look up all associations, take the JSON from those stores and include them in the post. The very magical config. Take a picture of that, folks. Yes. You've been missing that?
We wrote our own writer for that.
Yeah. In there. Yeah. But there is a but here. Associated data, stored data is not realized on save. Let me show you what I mean. I'm also going to change the branch here to inline associations. Refresh. Goodbye. There we go. Magically, we have all the grids here now. We're reading. This is what we're reading now. Is it viewable down there? Can you see? Yeah. 4 licenses. But if I change anything here and save it, see the little red indicator there indicates that it's still dirty. Although I posted everything, all the address, all the licenses was posted, I responded correctly with everything, but it's still not realized here. And that's just how it works out of the box. So this you have to deal with. You have a couple of options that I see. So saving associated data in a big JSON is generally a bad idea for some reasons. Sencha doesn't really support it. But also I can see that in the database, when you're handling deletions, it will be setting an empty array will probably mean delete. So I wouldn't dare using too much on sensitive data. Then you need to trust your UI developers very much, because setting in an empty array will mean delete it all. Those automatically include, but if you're using .NET stuff, they usually have, they want it this way. I come across it a lot of times. But if you want to do it, to realize this data afterwards, you have a couple of options. You could reload all data after a successful save, making a new call. Then you're sure that everything is happening correctly. You could do that by just, in the callback of the save, just calling link to again, and everything gets reset. It gives you an extra call, but it's very, very safe. You know you have the latest data. It's 2 calls, something like that. Or you could call commit changes to the store, just close the dirty markers without realizing any data. You can do that with the commit changes command in callback. This will mean no extra call, but there are really no data realized in that store. Or you can code around it. I've done that. You can do that. Yeah, you know what you're supposed to get, and then you can just reload go in and loop the stores and commit and update the data manually. If you're using the data session that we're going to talk about later, it's also get a little bit easier for you. So. And there is also this thing I want to mention. What happens if the array data is the license array is missing? I've seen this so many times, so I wanted to show you. In my data here, we're looking at the controller. I have prepared a company profile that doesn't have license data. Anyone dealing with that have been messing around with the association, I will assure you have seen this call. All of a sudden there is a call going to the name of the model. Very strange. It took a while for me to understand why it is, but it is because now it wants to make a store, but there is and it's also an Ajax store. The associated store is an Ajax store by default. And it doesn't have a URL, and it reverts back to the class name. You can change that. If you go back to the license model where you configure your association, you can add the store config. And this is completely undocumented. It doesn't exist in the documentation. It has been there at some point. It still works. It's in the source code. It's super private. You shouldn't use it, but it's a great way of solving this. In the store config, you can put any config on that associated store. There's probably tons of stuff you want to configure on that store, and you can do that in the store config. Will probably be replaced by something else in a later version. But so in this case, we're configuring the proxy of the associated store to be a memory proxy, and it is not going to make it. Try to make any calls, unnecessary calls. And when we save data here now, we're gonna. Where am I in time? Okay. And then we're moving to the next scenario where all the associations are on separate endpoints. Yeah. In that, now we also need to save the licenses. So we save the company profile, and we also save the licenses with the store's sync method. And we obviously removed the rights, all fields, and the associated true of the proxy, so they're saved by themselves. Now we need to configure the license model. If you configure the license model with all its APIs, it's going to use those. So let's take a noteworthy here is also when you create one of those associated stores and you're not using it, it's not going to load. So it's not going to exist it's not going to make any calls until you do a binding or using it in a view model. So that's fooled me a couple of times. I configured everything accordingly, but nothing happens. Start binding it and it will be created when it's used, and then it will also alter them. let's see what I mean here. On read, a filter will be posted. Property. Let me just show you that instead. Proxy associations. If anyone interested. Anyone interested in this code? It's on GitHub later if you want to try that. There we go. Proxy associations. Yeah, if I what do I show? Yeah. See here, now we're reloading. We have two calls for read. The companies without the licenses, and it also made a call for the endpoint for the licenses. Sencha will then, because of that association, send a filter that you must honor in your background, in your backend. It sends a filter array. It says property company ID should be this ID, exact match true. It actually tells your backend to return. Now I want the licenses with this company ID, and you can deal with that easily if you have a relation to your database. Multi-model scenarios. You can also glue to your view model a number of things and change and monitor them using a data session. This is what I mean with the multi-model scenario. When we're talking about the exe data session, it was introduced in some of the later versions. But the primary job of such a session is to manage the collection of records of many different types and their associations. So it basically monitors the changes the users make in the models and stores that you specify. And then you can, at any point, create a batched operation and save it all in one go. So it's very convenient. So in this new demands, we have a company with licenses, as before, but we also add another store with pool cars that are not associated. They're on the same level as company profile. And also a data model called feedback. Feedback is just a model, data model. What we get with the session features is two functions that are important. On the session, we can call get changes. It will return an object describing all the changes. And we get a get save batch, which will later return start. So this gives us a one-point save. We can just call the session, get changes, or get save batch, dot start. And everything will fire off. I will show you this. So how do we enable sessions first? To use sessions, you do that on a view. Strangely enough, I think, but you need to have a session true on the view model. And then everything you glue onto your view model for this view will be included in the session, depending on how you add it. If you want to add a store, you need to call set session on the store. I'm going to show you the code for that. That's store.set session, this.get session in the view controller. I'll show you the complete code there, it's easier to see. If you want to load a model and add it to the session, you just send it as an argument after the load. So there is a new argument for load, which is the session. So if you include that in the load, it's going to be registered in that data session. 10 minutes, thank you. But if you use the link to command, it will automatically be added to the session. So these are actually the same thing you're doing. The load and the link to. Just to show you what I mean. Do you have a bunch of questions? Well, let's keep going. Now it's starting to look like an application, or maybe not. There we go. Now we have a company profile with associated licenses we have a store of pool cars, and we have a feedback form with a feedback mode. So when loading this, it's got all my companies here. Then it was a call to feedback to getting this part, the licenses here, and the cars here. So if we just try to save stuff here and do a lot of changes, that's some feedback. Oh wow. Save. It will send a bunch of calls. Update companies, update feedback, update licenses. And it will batch those. If any of these fail, it will stop and you can control that. So let's see how that session looks like. If we put a... No, I wasn't going to start here. If I stop at the... Take a look at the how the session looked like. Make a change here, make some change here, and delete, and back, and now I save. So now we're gonna see look at the session. This gets session. Under the data property here, you will see all the registered models for this session. They're all the models that this session knows about. That's a good start. You can also see, get to the reference object with ID. So here you can see all the pool cars, you can see all the licenses configured. That's just for debugging. If we then get changes, you will get an object with all the changed models, and the action that U is update. There was one updated license license. So basically everything it needs to send to make it safe. And then when we let's continue. Let's continue. And all the stuff is being sent. So it's basically very convenient for you. And everything was on one save call. Get save dash.start. 6 minutes. So it's 1 minute more. 5 minutes of question would be enough. There's also, I've added this late, but sending extra parameters to the backend is a big thing. Many users have, at different points in their data, when the data lives, they want to send some extra stuff. Both on load, on save, and then maybe they need something locally sent always. And that's always a problem and also a question. We have a few options. I'm going to show you a couple of them. We have the extra params on the proxy, where you can set static parameters that always will be sent when the proxy is used. It's very convenient. You can also set those in. You can set them statically, and you can change them at any point by getting hold of the class and calling that set extra param function. So basically, you can just change that from the controller, or you can send to most of the operations you're doing. You can send parameters as an object. So save and sync, for example, can take an object which is the config for an operation, which takes params, for example. So if I want to send the height of the current view, I can send that with it on save or on sync. So that's pretty much it, I guess. What I'm just have to skip this part. Sorry about that. Yes. You need to take a serve in the mobile app. Questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, great talk. Any experience with dealing with parameters that are part of the path instead of query parameters?
Sorry.
With REST APIs, some styles will have the parameters in the path as opposed to query. Do you have experience dealing with that in proxy? Because we end up changing the URL constantly to deal with that.
I haven't dealt with REST APIs in a while, no, but those URLs are built up by the system, right? Sending the parameters here are sent with a post, I guess, and only if it's a get, it's going to be sent on the fire server.
Right. For example, like company ID 5 would
Yeah.
be company /5. Entence Ext JS, we haven't found a good way to deal with that style of URL.
No, I can't answer that actually.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
I'm using that all the time.
What?
I'm using that all the time.
Some kind of template, yeah, I don't know, isn't it?
Okay.
Nice talk.
It's a URL template, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you're using the REST proxy, and then it's kind of by default added to that URL. But you can also modify when and where it is added. Done that to some extent.
Okay. You and you are connected. Great. Any other questions? Okay, I covered it all.
When you're creating the first record, if you're doing associations,
Yes.
can you elaborate on how it works to get the primary key for the server first, and then saving the rest of the records afterwards, or how is that working? Since you don't have the primary key if it's the first record. If you're creating IKEA and creating 2 licenses before saving IKEA.
Yeah, basically what you're doing is Sencha will send the temporary ID first,
Yeah.
right? It's also going to do that on the associated data. So you need to do that connection in the backend later on the first save.
Yeah, that's typically not possible.
Typically not possible. Yeah.
I usually just have to save the main record first.
First,
and
you're doing
then
it in
wait
2 steps.
Yeah, 2 steps, and that
Yes.
means that I can never use associations.
Yeah, that's a bummer. But have you looked at the client ID property? Play with that?
Yeah, but I can't change the server.
Oh. Right. Yeah, there are some problems. If you don't have any questions, more questions, thank you for listening to me. Glad to be here.